Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Sharon, brilliant to have you here today. And to start with, please introduce yourself and tell everybody about the great work that you do.
Thank you, Ellen, for having me. It's great to be on your show, and it's great to receive your invitation to be on your channel. Well, my name is Sharon. I think everybody knows me as Sharon, but I also have this little nickname, Nightingale Sharon Sleep, which is the name of my podcast. It's a podcast that I tell everyday stories of everyday people. Nothing big, nothing too small, nothing to be quantified about, but it's just an everyday story about a casual, regular person. Um, Professionally, I'm a trained company secretary, so I've been doing compliance service for 2018, 20 odd years. And then because of some halt in my career, uh, I've decided to come up to help out my friend on the operations side for this compliance service. So it's an outsourcing company secretary service or corporate compliance service, servicing mainly the Australian SMEs. And so that really is what I do. But then I'm also a very, very keen self-care advocate. And it's also because of all the major life events that has happened and that has taken place that resulted me to go on this path. And just very recently, I released a post, and I didn't realize it's already 7 years I've been advocating self-care. And so, as I just very briefly, as when I started this advocacy of self-care, I thought I will be jumping on topics, different topics, that I couldn't stay on just this self-care alone. But I think as I peel every layer of understanding what self-care truly is and not what the mainstream of or the media has been showcasing us, it goes deep down than just what we read and what we hear on the social media and stuff like that. Not, they all of them are doing great work. It's just that I took a different perspective as I understood what self-care was all about. And I also believe in doing business, we truly need to nurture ourselves before we can serve our clients better. So yeah, and also I do coach people here and there. I'm not a trained professional coach, no, but I like helping people who come to me and say that they are stuck somewhere and they need help. And sometimes I think it's not what we learn from the books, but it's the application through all the life lessons we have learned throughout. I think that gives much more meaning than I just pick the theory and methodologies from the books I've read or things that my lecturer has taught me. And so, yeah, I just hope that everything that I've been doing has added value and also added value to myself to begin with. So thank you, Ellen.
What a great opening. And what you're talking to there is music to my ears at a number of different levels. So, for instance, the My 31 Practices book here is a self-development book. But in the introduction, we point out that I think it's 80% of self-development books are not opened. So, people think
Yes,
they've made the purchase, so they've made the development.
that's right.
Um, and also what you were saying there about, it's not what's out there on social media and being sold. It can be helpful, but sometimes actually it's the opposite. And also what you were saying about the value of life experience. So I love nothing more when I'm in a work setting and running workshops of having mixed hierarchy groups because this is a hypothetical situation, but imagine, let's say, a lady, middle-aged, who is part of the cleaning team, and she has been born in a different country, and she's chosen, for whatever reason, to come to another country. She's maybe raised a family, she's had to learn a language, she's maybe in her time had to hold down more than one job to survive um, and all of that. And she's sitting next to, say, the finance director, who is from a very wealthy family, who was fortunate enough to go to a very good university, and because of his parents' connections, was able to be fast tracked in a big company and is now the finance director. Well, it's the lady who often adds much more value to the workshop discussion because of life experience rather than the other person, right?
Yes, of course, we are not also discounting that person who were born with silver spoon in his mouth, but I guess all everyone's life experience are so different, and I think a lot of time in the society we tend to compare experiences. But in my journey, I believe everyone's experiences has meaning to their own stories, and I think it's time for us to start giving a little bit of appreciation. We may not want to respect fully because it's hard to get people to respect, yeah. But I thought, why don't we start appreciating everybody's story, regardless? Do not. I don't think we should put any values to it. I mean, financial, monetary values to it, or even wanting to compare it. Yeah, I don't think I don't think it's that nice, Alan. I think it's really nice to appreciate but not discount just because that person may not have gone through the similar experience as the other person or ourselves, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. And, I was using those two examples just to make the point. And I guess it's because, the person in the senior position perhaps has more visible signs around them being able to make a contribution compared to the lady example that I gave. But everybody has their story, everybody has their experiences. And ultimately, I remember on a values jam actually with somebody, a lady called Pauline Crawford, we came to the conclusion that we all are nothing more than the sum of all of our experiences, which I think is a great way to look at yourself. And then I'm curious about your podcast, Everyday People, Everyday Stories. I'm a great fan in business of the fact that it's often the people that do the unsung jobs that actually are the people that deserve much more recognition than they receive. So um, I remember in hotels, a lady whose job was to clean the marble floor for the reception area. And
Mm,
she did this work at nighttime.
mm.
But when you spoke to her about her job, she was amazing because she said, my floor welcomes every single guest to this hotel. And when you get people that are so invested in their job at that level, it's just amazing.
Oh yeah, yes, yes. I I definitely get that lady and the marble story. Yes, it is this category of people usually we kind of take them for granted. Oh, it's just a
Yep.
marble floor. Oh, it's just cleaning of the marble floor. But without her, that piece of marble floor will not be that clean. Yeah, I mean anyone could do the job, but we may not get that clean as this lady had done it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the podcast that I did was no guest invited. It's just basically me, my voice, and my story. And I started during COVID time. There was so much time, the world was shut down, and so I thought, why don't I just listen to my own voice as I record my own storytelling, whatever I was going through at that point in time, and hopefully it resonates with just one person. I know this world has 8 billion people. I'm not Stephen Bartlett or or Jay Shetty or anyone. But the thing is, for me, it's more of like if one person have heard of my story of my episode, I hope it resonates with them. And I hope it sits well with them. Nothing huge, nothing big, but it's just that we often podcasts always or almost usually invite guests who are very successful, a big businessman with big position, blah 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 blah, and how they made it. But we sometimes forget the people like the lady in the marble floor. What about her life? Her life was never spoken about. So I thought, why don't I do it and my story? Because at the end, it's my diary. It's my audio diary, I would say.
Oh, good for you. And it just to encourage you, I enjoyed what you said there about if it just affects one person. And I heard something similar from somebody recently who described how they were contacted by a person who had listened to something that they had broadcast. And that person said, I listened to what you said and I chose not to take my life that day. So, that is the effect that you can have on one person. And, when you remember that, it gives you a lot of power, I think. So let's choose a card from the Values Jam card deck.
Sure.
I'm going to tip out the cards, and I'd like to ask you, how many piles of cards shall I make in front of me?
Just two.
Two. Okay, they're different sizes.
Just two?
Yep. So would you like the
Yeah.
left pile or the right pile?
All right.
The
I'll do the left.
left. Okay.
The left.
And now I've got probably around 20 odd cards here. So a number between 1 and 20 something.
12.
12. Okay. So our card that we've chosen is this: learning.
Ah, I think it's very well suited. Nice. I like it.
So why such a positive reaction to start?
Right, because very recently, one of my connects on LinkedIn has actually posted something, and he has actually asked those who have read his post to share what are their quotes for life. And one of my quotes that I hold very closely is that when it comes to learning, the sky is the limit. So there is endless of things we can learn. And the thing is, we will never short of things to learn. So
Yes.
that's why when I saw the card learning, oh my God, how am I?
So we've got lots to talk about then. So the first question is this, and it's a very simple question, but not so easy necessarily to answer, which is, what does learning mean? And what does it look, feel, and sound like?
What does it mean? Learning basically is like opening my narrow mind. Every time when I learn something new, I know my current mind is narrow. And therefore, learning is like opening my narrow mind. How does it feel? How does it feel or sound like? It's like, the ocean. And when you stand by the beach and when you look out, that that to me is like the learning, the vast and the scale of learning. It's endless. You just can't finish. Ellen, it's like I can't say I've graduated. No way. I've graduated from still college, yeah, we all do. But no, from learning we will never ever. So it humbles me. Learning humbles me a lot. Because you see, even if we are so great, there's one thing I've realized, Ellen, when it comes to learning, is that when we go to any other countries where different languages are spoken, we still need to learn that language. We don't know anything and we cannot communicate if we don't know the local languages. So even if we are a PhD holder, you like to call it, or anything you would like to say, or how much status you have in your home country, but when you go to a country where the language is foreign, we are at the mercy of it. And that's what learning is all about. And learning is just not about information and knowledge, it's about culture as well. Because the people we see, if we, especially for traveling, I think traveling, everyone can resonate. When you go to different country, it could be our neighboring country, but no, things are still different. There is this small, subtle culture there that we may not practice it in our hometown, home country, or even in our city. And so the learning is so huge. That's why I say it's the expansion of my narrow mind. At any time when there's something new, it's an expansion of my narrow mind. My mind is always narrow when it comes to learning. Although I would like to say that I'm open-minded, but nah, I think I'm narrow-minded when it comes to new information. And so I love learning new things. So people used to say this, I've just lightened it a little bit. During college times, people used to tell me, or my friends used to tell me, Sharon, you need to be a specialist. You need to specialize or major in something. I'm like, why? Yeah, so that you'll be good at it. I'm like, Yeah, but there are other things I can learn too. So if I take accountancy, I could be a great accountant, but what about law? I like to know about law as well. What about medicine? I like to know about medicine as well. So that's why I resorted in taking business administration because it covers a lot of small little subjects like tax, accounting, blah blah blah. So yeah, it's a little bit of a school thing, but that's what I saw since young. I I not say I don't like to be a specialist, but there's so much more. And so if you have the opportunity, I took the opportunity to be a generalist instead of a specialist. Of course, people will say bucket is different, but Alvin, there's always argument with everything. So you will do just whatever we want as long as we're happy.
Yeah, so there's like loads that I want to respond back to. So first, if writing a book appeals to you, Expansion of My Narrow Mind, I think could be a fantastic title for a book.
I know. I'm just about to write it down on my phone.
And then, yeah, learning for me is about something new, whether that's knowledge or information or a skill set. And then you mentioned culture as well. And that made me think of even intuition is actually learning in action because as you experience things, you don't really understand why you know a certain thing, but it's just all of the data that you've processed through your experience that is otherwise called your intuition. And then the importance of context. And when you were talking about, you go to just the neighboring country, and maybe your perception is that things will be the same but a little bit different. And not necessarily, it could be hugely different. So learning is very contextual because in one situation, the learning might be highly valuable, and in another situation, it might be completely redundant.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's so it's never the learning itself, it's always the value of the application, which is what you said right at the beginning as well. Um, I'm a fellow generalist like you, and I think I use the term that we suffer from specialism. Um,
Yes.
and I don't mean to be unkind to people that are listening or watching this, but it, in my experience, what happens with specialists is that unless they're given the environment in which they're able to understand opinions from people outside of the specialism, then they kind of get lost in their world and they see it as the center of the universe, whereas it's actually just a part of a bigger
Yes.
thing. And generalists generally seem to get that and understand that more. So the ideal, I guess, is where you've got generalists in a senior position or at least a collaborative position, able to engage with specialists, but then be able to use their knowledge in a general way, taking
Yes.
into account the big picture.
Yes.
Um, and then finally, the your ocean metaphor, looking out onto the ocean. I love that. I'm going to build on it a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to imagine that you're somewhere and it's a beautiful day. The sky is blue and it's warm, and you know that you're near the coast, but you're on a road and you see a small path and it's got fences on either side, and you're curious about what is down this path. And you make your way down the path, and then you turn a corner, and there is the beach and the wide ocean. So for me, that's learning. So rather than be already on the shore looking at the ocean, it's that going down your narrow mind and then turning the corner to see
Yes.
the opening of it. Okay, so let's get very practical now.
Sure.
Where have you, and this is the opposite, I guess. So where have you noticed a lack of learning?
I think the one that I've observed, I think it comes from those very technical knowledge sort of a learning. By that, what I mean is that when professionals are truly specializing in a certain subject matter, And I think this one, I'll probably correlate it with science. Um, Science is always with evidence. Yeah. And so when we learn something and there's a result and there's evidence to it, it's very easy for us to accept it. But what about learning? Like life is not science. Yeah. Life, there's so many components to it. There could be evidence, and there sometimes could be evidence that cannot be explained. And so I think where it's lacking is the balance um, from people who are very technical or people who are rather, probably sometimes I would say, refuse to expand their mind. I don't think everybody is rigid, Ellen. I think we all are born with with our brain, which is like a sponge, and it can be expanded if we want. But a lot of times our surroundings and our environment and everything else make us not want to expand. Sometimes it's because the truth that we may see from whatever that will be unfolded, yeah. So I think what's lacking there is the balance. And if it's from the very technical specialist point of view, it's probably the rigidity part that makes them not want to expand their mind. Because sometimes you see the universe, we can't explain, right? We can't explain the higher power or and we can't explain energy. Okay, we don't talk about those high energy as well. Let's do energy. Now, of course, they say they have the equation to measure energy in chemistry and physics and stuff. But energy per se, what do we understand? A lot of people think it's just stamina and just strength. No, energy is it's not just strength and it's not just stamina. We can't explain what energy is because when we talk to certain people, and the energy we feel, how do we quantify that? And how do we explain that sort of energy? So that's what I meant by learning. Like if we learn to understand that energy is not just strength and not something that can be easily quantified or must be quantified, we learn something new. We
Yeah,
discover something new.
yeah. And so what you're talking about energy there is close to my heart at the moment because I've just created a piece of work around kindness, and I've created a new word which is kindnetics, which is a play on the word kinetics, which is around energy. And so kindnetics is the study of acts of kindness and the social energy it creates. Um, and then I have created a formula that you can use to assess any act of kindness, but it's a very perception-based assessment. It's not scientific, right? Because you can perform exactly the same act of kindness to two different people, and their
Yeah,
perception of it will be completely different.
yeah,
Um, and then what you were saying about sometimes you can't explain things, in a good way, I think I've become more accepting that in some cases, you don't need an explanation. So in some ways, you don't need to learn. You just need to enjoy it for what it was. And I'll give you an example that's happened this week. Um, I'm involved with the Global Poetry Showcase, and we've requested submissions for this year. So a lady sent in a beautiful poem about a golden eagle, and she sent me a follow-up email. I think it was on Monday, saying, when is my poem going to be published? Because it gets published on the website, a new one each day. So I replied to her saying, it will go live on Wednesday. And she responded saying, Wednesday, that's my birthday. Thank you so much. Now, when things like that happen, part of my brain is, how did that happen? Did she tell you it was her birthday and you forgot, but you remembered, and maybe somehow it happened by accident or whatever. But now I tend to just enjoy it because what a brilliant moment that was for both of us, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I said that that bit is a learning, it's because oh, things, the coincidence or whatever that is non-explained, it's it's something new, and it's that oh okay, oh that is it. Yeah, that sort of reaction or probably response where we experience that
Yeah, yeah. So, and what about yourself? When have you experienced learning?
all the time, Alan, all the time. Talking to people, connecting with people, relating to people. Mm, there were moments in my life that I've become so immature. Well, I'll probably blame it to my dad or my parents who overly loved me. And so, yes, I got my way in a lot of things. But you know what? Thanks to them, because they raised me this way. They gave me a chance to learn, to see things that not everybody behaves the same way, not everybody acts the same way. And so I think for me, my biggest learning is with people. It's really people. Um, the various type of people has taught me that sometimes you just to take things easy and just to learn to just let it be. Yeah, that song "Let It Be." Um, not taking things overly too hard or too personal, because when they there's a quote where they say that this too will pass. Yeah, it is too will pass, not just for the events in our life, but whoever that we are dealing with. Yeah, it's just this moment this person is giving us a hard time. We can withdraw, we can get into it, or we can, do whatever, however we want to respond. But sometimes it's just good to just let it be, and just let it go. Be the bigger person. I think being the bigger person is one of the biggest learning for me, is because when we be the biggest person by just being ourselves, just watch and observe everything else, how the environment reacts then.
Hmm.
It's not how we think it will be or thought it could be, where we just let it be and just let it go. A lot of times I've noticed a lot of times we just take things a little bit too hard. It's like, oh, that person hasn't been nice. Yeah, okay. Hasn't been nice, that's fine. Walk away. Done. Grab yourself coffee or something, or walk away and go and see some books and see some clothes or something. Don't need to take it too hard. So that's my biggest, it's one of my learnings in life.
That's a good one, and it reminds me of I read a blog by a guy called Shrikumar Rao. I think it was last week, and he tells the story of his grandson coming to see him, and they went on a fairground ride. So it was a little car with a steering wheel, but of course it did it itself, right? And the little boy said, "Granddad, can I drive?" And so he said, "Of course you can." And they enjoyed it so much they had another ride. And then the little boy said, "Granddad, was I a good driver?" And he said to him, "Yes, you're the best driver in the world." And then his blog goes on to describe how that's actually the way life is. We're encouraged by some people to think that we have the steering wheel and we're in charge, but in fact, we're not
Nah.
really.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. That's a beautiful story.
And my learning, I think, is if you follow your values and you're true to yourself, then things will kind of work out okay. I think I agree with what you said about, it might not be in the way that you anticipated, but things will be okay. And accepting that you're not so much in control is very liberating, actually.
Yeah.
And I've started to really think about how, and again, I preface this with I'm not saying that goals are a waste of time. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that goals are vastly overrated in terms of their usefulness. And I sense that a lot of the time, goals are kind of a comfort blanket or some form of security mechanism because we take comfort in having a target. And then even if, let's say you're halfway through the year and you review the target and you're behind target. So then what we do is another coping mechanism, which is, oh, so now I need a corrective action plan to make up the shortfall. But what you don't look at is the changed circumstances all around you that might
Yes.
mean that the original goal is no longer appropriate. Maybe it could be changed. And a question, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. I've been asking people recently, when something that you're really proud of happens, what percentage have you influenced that outcome versus external factors influencing it?
Wow. Wow, that's a big question, Alan. Honestly, that's a big question. When something that I'm proud of takes place, we always like to think that we're 100% influencing everything, but no, no. I've come to learn as well. Truly, this the word I use is learn. What I've learned is that every achievement I have achieved, so-called, or any proud moment that materializes, all right, I'm proud because I feel 50% is my influence, but there's also another 50%. There's the influence of my surrounding, the people that are around me, and the very moment that moment took place. So, which means to say that that moment, there could be some magical thing that has happened. Yeah. But if tomorrow the similar proud moment happened, it's a different magical moment that present. So, yeah, I would think I don't want to claim too much credit of it. Of course, I'm proud. Just to console myself, I will say that yes, I did it. I did it. But really, when we sit down quietly and think for ourselves, no, because let's take an example. If I successfully publish a book someday, yes, I put all the hard work in writing it. Correct. But I have to also remember if I'm looking after my dad for the 2 years, that 2 years, that course of 2 years that I'm writing a book, I have my dad around me and I'm looking after him. He has played a part in influencing the book publishing as well because why? He gave me also the space for me to do my writing. Because I could be looking after 24 hours, yeah, but I could tell, okay, dad, I'm writing a book. Yeah, so I need some time, So, I'll prep your this, or, so yeah, we often forget that bit. Yeah, so I think when we look deeply, we are not that 50% fully influencing our proud moment. It's actually probably 20 to 30%. The 70% is all a lot of other things that combine together to make the 70%. And I feel sometimes there's no way we are able to, again, I'm going to use the word quantify. What exactly holds that particular percentage?
Yeah, and I'll share two examples. One, I was talking to somebody recently about sports people at the top of their field and how they might win an Olympic gold medal or a world championship or whatever it is. But what's not seen is all of the people around them, whether it be the people that organize their travel or do their training or their diet or all of those people that are involved. So, like you say, it's an interesting question to ask what percentage do they play versus the whole of the contribution. And then the other one is it's kind of a sad and joyful story. So I was told this by a good friend who explained that one of his colleagues used to tell a story to his children when they were going to bed. And then his children the next day would say, Daddy, what happened in the story? Because they'd fallen asleep,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so he decided to write these stories down, and he had 200 of them. And then he got cancer, and he was in his hospital bed, and his wife and children, who were now grown up, thought that it would be a good idea to take his stories to him to go through the book because they weren't sure what was going to happen
Yeah.
about the illness. He then recovered, and he was inspired to create a TV series using these stories that he had written. And they are now in, I think, over 40 countries, entertaining children all around the world.
Wow.
So there you've got a situation where he has done something that is highly valuable. He should rightly be very proud of it. But the only reason it happened was because he got an illness. Because
Yeah.
if that hadn't happened, then that wouldn't have been the outcome. So it's kind of
Yeah.
weird how things happen.
Yeah. 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 And that I think that's where you mentioned um just something just can't be explained. And and just let it be.
And that's a lovely
Yeah.
song, by the way. I do like that song by the
Yeah.
Beatles. Now
This song has been playing my mind recently, this past few days. I don't know why, but it kept, playing in my mind.
and just now, I think you started to say who, what, where. You started to say something along those lines. And in Values Jam, there's an opportunity for you to ask your own question about learning. So why don't you do that now using either who, what, where, why, when, or how? And either if you've got the answer immediately, please do share that as well, or else I'm happy to give it the first go.
A question from me using one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Who is your greatest learning?
Okay. So can I translate that into who have I learnt most from?
Yep.
Okay. So this was my boss when I worked in a five-star hotel in London. I was an event manager. And so my job was to agree with clients all of the details for their event and then brief the operations team so that it would happen. And I shared an office with Peter, who sadly is no longer with us.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
was the most meticulous person I've ever known in my life, and everything had to be just so. And for that reason, I learned so much from him. And I'll just tell one story to evidence this. We had a lunchtime event. I remember this. It was 36 people on a U-shaped table for an airline company. And I received a message about an hour before the party arrived to say that one of the guests was no longer able to attend. And because I was busy with other stuff, I forgot to pass the message on. And so when Peter found out, he called me into his office, and I've never received such a big telling off in a professional environment. And he was shouting, he was red in the face. And I'm appreciate that some people listening and seeing this might think, well, he was being unreasonable, but let me continue. What he said was, because you failed to pass on this information, we did not remove the chair and we did not remove the cutlery and glassware from the table setting, and we did not rearrange it. So when people went to sit down, there was an empty space which we then had to deal with. And he said, it was embarrassing for me because it's my operation and I'm responsible for making sure that we have the reputation that we have. It caused work for everybody. It caused the guest embarrassment. And so never do that again. And so although it might seem harsh, and it probably was, I learned a lot from that about the importance of communication and making sure that the guest sees you in the best possible light, and many other things. So it's Peter. What about you?
Uh, I've got I've got so many, Ellen, but I'll probably just touch on the corporate side of things. I think it's one of my ex-bosses. This was my second job. No, third job actually. It's my third job. And this ex-boss of mine, because I was in the corporate secretarial department. So I work very closely with the MD. And this MD, I'm actually not sure whether he's still around, honestly. I don't know how to locate him. But when I was working for him, probably a decade or so, and before, he was already in his 70s. So he's probably in his 80s if he's still around. He is one very stern MD, but he was the nicest MD to me. Actually, I have two, but anyway, I'll just share this one because I was very young then, because it was my third job. He taught me so many things that I felt I was so equipped when I quit the job and went for the next. I felt I could just easily run a department thereafter upon quitting the job. But there was a whole reason why I quit the job, but it wasn't because of him. In fact, there were a lot of political things going on, but he was very ready to protect me. But I just told him, Mr. Agrawal, I think there's only so much you can protect me. I need to start protecting myself. I need to grow up. Yeah. So he has shielded me from a lot of things. And in fact, he and I has worked so close together that we successfully listed the company on the second
Wow.
board on the stock exchange. So it was that was really a proud moment in the corporate side of the story for me. But again, it's if he did not give me this opportunity, I could not proudly put those stuff in my resume or proudly say I've done so and so. And he was very disciplined. Even though he's an MD, he comes to work exactly the same time as everyone, and sometimes he's earlier than everyone. And so I have so much respect for him, and yeah, I'll never forget him. Because of him, I am so equipped. What I am today, partially is also because of his training. Even though I was just an assistant, Ellen, he actually brought me to bankers meeting and stuff. Like he made me exposed totally, and then he made me come back. It would come back to he made me dictate what exactly happened, and he told me what has happened in the room just now. So I had to. So that's where I started to learn so many things. So that's why yeah, I'm very grateful for having him as one of my ex bosses. He he didn't really he hasn't never scolded me. Yes, he has showed his temper a little bit, but he has never really scolded me or anything. And it was so easy to actually tell him that, Mr. Agarwal, I'm a little bit overwhelmed today. I don't think I can actually accompany you for that meeting. So I have to finish this for you for, the prospectus and stuff. He was a very understanding man, but he wasn't very understanding to a lot of other employees. So I don't know. So I'm happy because, yeah, for all the things I've learned from him.
And you're making me remember how everybody can help other people learn in their different ways, sometimes appropriate, sometimes less appropriate. Um, and even though it might feel uncomfortable at the time, if you've learnt from it, then over time, it feels less harsh and you start to realize the equation of what you learnt versus the pain that you suffered, and it makes it easier to rationalize in some ways. I think that you remembering him and making the point that, it's you are who you are today in part due to him is a good point for us to bring the Values Jam to a close now. So the final question is, what are you encouraged to do differently about learning as a result of this conversation?
Differently, I guess it's probably just stay true to yourself and stay loyal to your own value when it comes to learning. Don't be afraid of what other people say and what other opinions are about you when it comes to learning. I think at the beginning you did mention something about intuition. Yeah, I think sometimes listen to the second voice. They can be very accurate. They may not be loud. They are soft. But they can be very accurate than this one, than whatever that's on the mind. So I think what I would encourage doing differently is listen to yourself and trust yourself more. Saying that, I'm not saying to, not listen to other people, no. But taking opinions doesn't mean that you need to follow. Taking opinions just giving you other options and other ways, other consideration to take into account before you decide. Because at the end of the day, decision is ours. That's why we say we have to be accountable. Good, bad, we don't know, but we are accountable with whatever decision. And I think this is learning. There's no right or wrong. Not everything needs to be right or wrong. Ellen. Oh my God, I sometimes get so tired with people wanting to put category. This is right. This is yeah. I understand that some things values and stuff like this is right or wrong, but trust yourself. You won't go wrong because we won't harm ourselves. I believe one thing: we will never harm ourselves. We never choose to harm ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah. Could I ask you, I understand the direction that you're moving in, so be yourself, be true to yourself, listen to that voice, trust in your intuition. When might you have an opportunity to put that into practice in the coming days?
In fact, I have been putting my intuition in practice, and my self-care journey has been allowing me to become myself even more. How would I put? Which word should I use? More transparent in being myself. It hasn't been an easy 7-year period because the older version of myself was something that everyone was very comfortable with. But when I became myself, it was very difficult because they were not used to this version. To them, it's a new version, but it was my original version. But but the thing is that when I observe all the small little decisions I made throughout the 7 years, and in this past 1-2 years, at the encouragement of my very good friend who has asked me to listen to my intuition a little bit more, I begin to notice and also observe that I could look after myself better.
Great, thank you. And mine is when you were talking about opening your narrow mind, I haven't done this for a while actually because I've been busy with things that need to get done. But what I'm prompted to do as a result of this conversation is to just jump into something that I don't know anything about. Um, Not to spend, like a lifetime in it, but just to play, and explore something with curiosity that I know very little about. Because, like you say, if you don't go to new places, then you don't know what you might have missed or what benefit it might have brought. And I'm naturally quite curious, so I enjoy doing that sort of thing. So it'll probably be on Google. It'll probably be blocking 40 minutes on my calendar and just seeing where I end up. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's just, punching in, keying in just one random word and see where it takes you.
There you go. That's how I'm going to do it. So Sharon, thank you very much for joining me for this Values Jam. You're now a qualified Values Jammer, and
And I
and
found my comrade I found a generalist comrade in you, Alan.
yes, you did. You did. Okay, take care. Bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Alan, for this invitation. It's great to have this conversation with you. Take care and have a good day.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.